Goodyear City Council, February 25th, 2008. All items listed are for discussion only. No action can or will be taken. All council members are in attendance. We have 3 items for discussion. The first is concerns the Sonoran Valley. Second one is community funding, and the third is our budget status. So Katie Wilkin is up first, I believe. Here she is. Oh, there it is. She did it.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council. I do have a PowerPoint presentation, and I think it's getting brought up here in a minute. I'll go ahead and begin. The purpose of this work session is for staff to get policy direction regarding the rural development issues that have arisen in Sonoran Valley. As you know, Sonoran Valley was annexed on March 26, 2007. Since that time, the city has received several requests to locate manufactured homes on existing parcels or plotted lots in the area. The area of interest is primarily south of State Route 238. As you can see, that green line that goes through intersects is State Route 238 and the railroad that's in the area. The area of purple is the first village for Amaranth that was approved some time ago. And we're looking at the area that's the light green color that's south of 238, and that's primarily where most of the homes were existing when we did annex the property. And more property owners are looking to place manufactured homes in that same existing area. And there are, as I said, there are several manufactured homes and unpaved roads in that area existing today. And uses that were existing at the time of annexation are considered legal nonconforming uses, and they are allowed to continue under the city. At the time of annexation, the area had to be assigned zoning districts that were equivalent to county zoning. That did occur, and most of the area was zoned either AG, which is a 10-acre lot minimum, or AU, which is a 1-acre lot minimum. And the light green color is the AU area, and the dark green color is the AG areas. And again, the area we're looking at is primarily zoned AU, which is a 1-acre lot minimum. Even though we did assign an equivalent zoning district to the county, the city development standards are more strict than county development standards. And it is possible that some of the property owners didn't fully understand the extent of those differences in the development standards. There was no representation by the city that development would continue under the county standards, but they might not have understood what the full differences between those two different development standards would be. Any changes that might be proposed tonight would only adhere to single lot development. If a subdivision were to go into this area, that would fall under current city regulations. Staff has met with the Planning and Zoning Commission in work session on this item twice, in January and in February, and they have approved these policy recommendations. Again, staff is seeking policy direction from the mayor and council tonight. If these proposed policy changes are acceptable to the mayor and council, then staff would initiate appropriate code changes, which would be required to be approved through the public hearing process. So I'm going to go ahead and go through each policy item one by one. And if you have questions on any of those as we go through it, please let me know as we do it. And hopefully everyone received, I did pass out a handout which has a cover sheet and a little 2-page matrix with it. And I'm basically going to kind of be working off of this, the matrix. The first item is legal access and improvements. Currently, all residential development is required to have access to a public road or private easement. Roadways must be paved with curb and gutter and meet the city's design standards with regards to width, turning radii, and maximum grade. In these areas where development has already occurred, under county standards, it may not be practical to implement these standards where the unimproved roadway may be a great distance from an improved roadway. So the city is recommending that we require legal access to the property or show that access by prescriptive use is available. Roadways should be improved to the greatest extent possible. However, standards may be alleviated when not practical. However, basic fire safety requirements would always be provided at a minimum. Staff would also look to these new property owners to sign an agreement that they would not object being included in an improvement district for upgrading their roads to city standards in the future, if that's what we wish to do. This recommendation would require a zoning code change. We would be looking for this to be allowed in specific areas of Sonoran Valley only that small area that's zoned at AU that's south of 238. The revised policy would still be more strict than county standards. And so are there any questions on the legal access or roadway improvements issue?
Here?
Yes. Yes.
I guess my concern of some of these standards that state is that, we're all faced with a dust control now.
Yes.
We're going to have to come up with some new codes. And so I just kind of let it hang out there bothers me. Is the county, did they not have to take responsibility for dust control in that area before we annexed?
This area is within the non-attainment area. It's likely that once, especially once Montage starts building in the area, that it would be brought into the area and it would have to follow the dust controlling measures.
Because even
in the
if you're
future.
talking about increased in manufactured homes, that means density. That means more people on those roads. That means more dust. So I'm somewhat concerned if we don't have some type of timeline set up or some kind of dust prevention put on those dirt roads.
Mm-hmm. I should mention also that the Planning and Zoning Commission did bring up that concern too of
Yeah, I saw Mr.
hoping
Belzer
to
did.
create some type of timeline or
Sunset
sunset clause on this. And
But a sunset clause is one thing, but a density increase is another. We can set all the sunset clauses we want, and it could be too late. One doesn't know. So I'm more prone to look at the density and the increase in population.
And on that, Katie, will there be, with the new residences that come in there and does add to the density, will there be a requirement of some kind of more improved, even if it's a driveway to the actual road itself? I mean, I know that when we actually discussed the road that all these residences are going up to, and some have been there for 5 years already, and now the new guy on the block is supposed to pave the whole thing. I understand that's an issue, but I do believe that we should be requiring an improved driveway, in a sense, to the actual modular home or whatever it may be. Have you considered that at least part
yeah,
of
and we will go into more depth on the driveway issue in specific, but at the very minimum, it's a 2-inch aggregate over 4-inch compacted soil at a minimum is what we would be looking at to request of them to provide.
Okay, did I hear you say that this area did not come under PM10?
Correct. Currently, it does not, but that doesn't mean that in the near future it might not fall under.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Cavalier, let me clarify. It's technically not in the non-attainment area right now, but it is within what's called Area A. And Area A expands beyond the non-attainment area, so it is actually subject to the new regulations, although the new regulations don't apply to residential less than 4 units. So again, it's not for a single-family residence. The Area A actually goes all the way down to the south end of the city limits, but stops just 1 mile short of what we annexed. So there's really only a very one tier of sections that is not in the Area A that's subject to Senate Bill 1552.
Katie, in your executive summary, you said the city has received several requests to which several? I mean, 2, 5, 10, what is it?
Well, we did, at first, we had several permits that had begun under
I
the
understand
county.
that. Yeah, but-
And so there were 5 or 6 of those, and that in itself brought up, we might have this issue in the future if someone requested it. We've probably had, it's a small number, probably, 3 or 4 phone calls about manufactured homes. We have had other phone calls about some of these other issues, though. As for citing manufactured homes, it's probably only been 3 or 4, but that doesn't mean in the future we might not get more.
Well, let me follow that question up. Are we prepared to permit manufactured homes in this area then?
Again, that's something that we can talk about in a minute. We are proposing to possibly allow them in a limited area.
When you talk about a limited area, the confines of what would you say would be the confines of that limited area? Do you know where they are right now, the area?
Yeah. We know a specific area would be set if we came back to the city looking for an overlay district and code change, but generally it's south of 238, east of 83rd Avenue, and west of 75th Avenue.
That's on your agenda, isn't it? That's on your agenda anyway.
Yeah, manufactured homes is on the agenda.
Come down to this one on the next page.
Well, we understood, I think all of us, that if there was an application being processed to the county, that was
Right.
grandfathered in. This is different,
Right.
and it's important, but if there's only 3 or 4, is it really important to make exception to our codes right now?
Are you asking that we make exceptions to the code?
Yeah, we're asking for your opinion on, do you want us to look into make exceptions to the code, or do you feel that we should implement the code as it is today? Because, like I said, there may be some, we have a handful of property owners who are requesting these manufactured homes on these single lots, and when they hear what our city's regulations are, they're surprised by what we require compared to what the county required.
My concern is, what kind of manufactured homes are we talking about? Are we talking about mobile homes on wheels? Or are we talking about a manufactured home?
Real
There are some
manufactured
very
homes.
nice manufactured homes that are as nice as some homes that I see in our city right now. I don't know how we can put, what kind of limits we can put on
And
that.
the particular requests we got were for manufactured homes. There are some site-built homes in this same area, and if someone came in wanting a site-built home, we would have these same issues with regards to legal access. They would, we'd still be asking them to pave it to a certain standard that isn't the same standard that's already out there. So this particular issue applies to a site-built home or a manufactured home.
Well, that is a manufactured home, isn't it, a site, or is it?
No, a site-built home is what is predominantly in Goodyear.
Do I live in a site? Okay. Well, I didn't know the definitions, how you use your definitions, but
And I think county mandates double wides now, don't they?
Yes, they do.
One more quick question. Again, let's assume that somebody in the area that we annexed, okay, the big county, okay, now comes in and wants to add on to one of their prefab homes or manufactured home. What is our position on that addition?
The zoning ordinance spells out that, I believe it's when 50% of a structure is of a legal non-conforming use is altered, then it would be considered a non-legal non-conforming use, and they would have to bring it up to code.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
On the road, if I'm looking in that area that you said it's between 83rd and 75th, south of 238, I think that's the area just east of the fire station now, right?
Yes.
Just east of the school, about a mile and a half. So if
Yeah.
okay. If somebody has a lot down there that they've had for years, and they come and they want to put a manufactured home on it or even a site-built home, are we talking about asking them to improve the roadway from 238 all the way down the street and around the corner to their lot that's at the end of that section of land?
Yes.
Not realistic.
Currently, that's what the requirement would be. Current. We're saying maybe we could change that and they wouldn't have to improve the roadway that whole way since it's already been developed in a certain condition.
It's not very realistic
I guess,
to ask somebody to do that.
I'm thinking, given the economics of the
Not-
situation.
It's not realistic.
You know, you've got some subdivided pieces down there that I'm sure people have been sitting on for years and are thinking of popping a manufactured home up there for retirement purposes, or when a kid comes of age that they move out of the house but they still want to be within proximity, they subdivide the lot and they move next door. It's seeming to me that would be an unfair proposal to say,
Right.
you know, pave that. I understand we may have PM10 issues, we got to cross that bridge, but
And we'll look into that further,
But-
definitely.
it seems to me to bring that road, and having driven the area now 3 or 4 times being down there, that just seems like an undesirable or an unforeseen circumstance.
I see the fire chief nodding his head back there about access, I think.
I think it's an access issue. I mean, I think access is one thing, but I'm wondering on the standard. I mean, if you're cutting a new road, I can see it. But if you're not cutting a new road, and there's a road already cut down there, and there's a lot that's subdivided, and you have 40 homes as you do, or whatever number of homes we have down there currently, and you might double that to 40 because the vacant lots allow for that, I do think we've got a PM10 issue.
Yeah, we do.
But the economics of the situation, I don't think we nickel and dime everybody to get a road out of them. Unlike, in your case, building a 15-mile road, we're telling you to build it. That to me is a totally different paradigm, totally different set of circumstances.
I don't disagree with you.
Okay.
I mean, I don't disagree that it's
I guess
quite a responsibility to put on the individual owner.
I'm
So we got to find a solution.
we gotta find a middle ground. Am I hearing this correctly?
Right. Staff is proposing,
Well, that's one of the issues.
yeah, staff is proposing not putting that requirement on these property owners that are siting homes on lots that have already been subdivided, they're already out there, they're already parceled out, except, but trying to get as much of the requirement that they could possibly provide, we would ask for that. And then, of course, to ask them to not object to being in an improvement district in the future if that's the tool we need to upgrade the roads.
Which we may be forced to.
Well, to some extent, I mean, if you're going to checkerboard this thing all the way through, and half the checkerboard's going to be within an improvement district, and the other half is not going to be within an improvement district, I don't know. I see a lot of logistical nightmares. It seems I don't want to be draconian in the process, and folks that are putting a $100,000 investment now all of a sudden are faced with a $50,000 thing, and you take home ownership away from somebody.
Okay. All right, then I'll move on to the next item. And of course, at the end, we can just go back and discuss any of these. The next is fire protection requirements. Currently, new single-family homes must have fire protection available so that it meets the requirements of the fire code. I do have to point out that your staff report indicates that homes in this area would require a sprinkler system, and community development staff didn't fully understand that. And we have now worked with the fire department staff, and that would only be true if the home is over 3,600 square feet, which the majority of these homes are not going to meet that, so they would not require a fire suppression system. With regards to fire protection requirements, staff recommends that we continue to implement fire protection requirements as we do today. That's something we heard from Commission, that's something that shouldn't be compromised or lowered, so we should just continue to implement those as is. So are there any questions on that particular issue? Okay. Next is solid waste collection. There really aren't any policy recommendations with regards to solid waste collection, but we did want to point out that there could be instances in the future where property owners are required to pay for solid waste services, but not be able to receive those services due to the location of their home. And we would, of course, try and educate the property owner of that up front so they understand that. But in the future, there could be an instance of that.
That bothers me. It really does.
Part of it is just, the nature of the development down there and the roads that may connect them to their...
And I understand that. And so I guess, given that, I just don't see making somebody pay for a service that there's no possible way of getting.
Getting to it.
Yeah, I think that's wrong. I think that's unfair. And if they can't get water, because they're probably going to have their own well, obviously, and can't get trash, so why would we require them to pay something? I don't think that's right. Even if it's, $15 a month, I just don't think that's.
Well, we'll look into that further then, definitely.
I'd like to know how many, realistically, how many are we talking about?
Currently, the residents are receiving
Yeah.
waste collection, but it's just possible there could be an instance where this happens. Okay. So on to water and wastewater. If a new home is not able to connect to the public water system, they are allowed to apply for a new well permit from the Arizona Department of Water Resources, or they can tie into an existing community well. That's what we've seen so far, that there's existing community wells where up to 8 dwelling units are allowed to tie to these existing wells. New homes are also allowed of having the option of having private water storage tanks, and then they utilize water hauling, where the water truck comes and fills their water storage tank at a regular basis.
You had in the report, you said something about how many wells are too many? Private wells. So I guess we can't answer that. You have to answer that.
Wells are not permitted by the city, but since the city has water rights in the area, we are given the option to object to a new well to ADWR, and then ADWR would choose whether to follow up on that objection or not.
Okay.
So if we did feel there was too many, we could object if we felt we wanted to.
You mentioned the community wells where there are 8 residents that are tapping into that. Who pays for that? The individual homeowner?
Yeah, and they have a private well agreement amongst them.
Themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many of these situations exist there?
I know there's at least one community well. There's probably at least 2. I don't know exactly how many there are, but that's what we've seen so far. The ones that started in the county that we finished up, those were all tying into existing community wells.
I'd like to, Councilmember Lord's comment, I think. Is this possibly going to negatively impact future PADs down there and master plan communities? If the water table, in fact, is minimally acceptable, seems, I'm not sure that we want people drafting from that aquifer when we're going to need the water for really why we annexed the place in the first place. Right. And that was for master plan communities of site-built homes with good roads and infrastructure. Is there a negative impact there that's possible? Or is there bountiful water, like the Hacienda? I don't know.
For the amount of homes we're looking at, it's probably not going to impact it because it is a very small area. But I mean, that's something that staff would want to stay abreast on.
You just can't go by that because we're talking density. It's going to get bigger and more people and more demand.
We do what staff is recommending. What staff is recommending that currently in the policies, it does say that when the public water system becomes available, then the private well should be abandoned and they should tie into that. But it doesn't specify when. Like, it says a reasonable distance, and so staff would like to actually set a specific distance. We've seen 600 feet in other cities. That's something, the actual distance we'd get into later if we came back with a code change. But that's something that the city would like to see implemented.
Because some of those homes are further than that.
Currently, yes, but someday, if the road, if there's another PAD in the area, or once Montage starts building south of 238, there might be water service available in the street, and then they could tie into that water service and then abandon the well.
I was just going to add that we maybe have some limitations about how much regulation we can put on well development, even though as you pointed out, it would be in our interest to have as few as possible down there. So at the point in time where the city wants to develop a well, we won't have to worry about potential impacts on the other wells. The only good thing is that the individual wells are limited to 35 gallons per minute for domestic use, non-irrigation purposes, so the use is going to be fairly low. And we're also talking about limiting this to the properties that are already existing of record, as opposed to somebody coming in and doing a subdivision, in which case we would want to push them in the direction of a public water supply that is consistent with our system. So, but I guess what we're asking, though, is kind of push this authority as far as we can to, if people do drill wells, then they also agree not to object that if we come and want to drill a well to provide a public system. So we're saying we would allow these exceptions, or these to occur, but under certain conditions, and we would propose those conditions that you could then in turn hopefully codify, and we could make that a requirement.
That is just kind of presenting it as if it were temporary, because I think if they think that that's the way that it is, they're going to argue to keep the wells.
Exactly, but what we're proposing is that we actually put something on the books that when they come in to develop their property, then they are made aware of what our position is, so that they're not surprised later on.
Okay, when we come back and we say, you know, we're running a main service line down your area, main water line.
We have a similar code regulation right now with respect to sewer. People are allowed to, if sewer is not available within a reasonable distance, they can do a septic system, but then if a sewer line is then placed within reasonable distance, they're given a year to connect to the system.
Okay.
At their cost?
At their cost. And we're proposing a similar type of a regulation with respect to the water wells. But if we adopt these now, then as people come in, they can be made aware of these things, and then it won't be a surprise later.
Right, I agree with that.
Is this part of active management area, AMA? Is this part of our, I mean, we annexed this area. Was it part of the AMA before? And if not, did it become part of the AMA by our annexation?
I'm getting head
All the
shaking.
above is yes? Okay. So the wildcat wells that you have happening in other rural communities around the state would be actively managed by ADWR as well, right? It's Maricopa County is managing the wells? Okay. I guess but I mean, you don't have what's happening, say, in Yavapai County, where you have wildcat subdivisions and they just have the right to drill a 35 GPM. Wow. Yes, you do? Don't have that. Okay. There's a lot more permitting that goes on in this process than goes on in Yavapai or goes on in northern Arizona and the problem areas.
I think he's going to speak. I think he has some, Charles has something.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of council, if I may, the amount of water that's going to be used by these relatively small number of private users is very, very small in regards to the overall aquifer quantity. And we're talking 35 GPM type wells, so it's not going to impact the overall water quantity down there in the area. And then there's also a limitation on the number of residences that can be on one well.
8.
And that's 8. Okay. So as they reach that, the cost of drilling a new well is going to be so prohibitive that they're going to look for a public solution, a public option anyways. Okay. But the overall water usage is going to be very, very small. I wouldn't worry about aquifer drawdown or those types of things with that kind of usage.
This may be far out there, but 20 years from now, Charles, flip the scenario, would you be worried if you were one of those 35 gallon per minute wells?
No,
losing
because
some of your aquifer because we're drawing down on a public system now?
No, because I would imagine that opportunities to access the public system would be available for those folks.
Right.
Yeah, so they would then make the switch over to the public system.
But they may find themselves in a situation where they're forced to in order to get water because the public system is now drawn down. There's a very small well that's not as deep as our public system well would be.
Mm-hmm. And it would be a similar issue with septic systems. When they're on a private septic system, they would stay on that. Then when their system began to fail or did fail, and public sewer is now close enough to be feasible and economically doable for these folks to tie in, then they would make the tie into public sewer at that time as well. So I see the infrastructure advancing the infrastructure being available for these properties as this whole area is developed over time. And it'll work itself out.
As long as we educate them, that information is out there. Educate them, have the information out there for them.
Okay.
Are perk tests required in that area?
Perk test for septic?
Yeah.
Yes. And it's going to be based on lot size, square footage, those kind of things, numbers of fixtures.
Everything's minimum one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions on that, then we can move on to manufactured homes. Currently, manufactured homes are only allowed in the manufactured home subdivision zoning district. Since there are already manufactured homes in the area of what we're talking about, though, it may be appropriate to allow some manufactured homes in this area. What staff is recommending is that we create an overlay district in that general area south of 238 between 75th Avenue and the 83rd alignments, where manufactured homes would be allowed in that overlay district.
What is the acreage that you're proposing that this overlay district big?
We don't have a specific acreage because, like I said, we didn't draw specific boundaries yet because if we do this, we would need to have public hearings and hear from the public on who may want to or not want to be part of this overlay district and take that into consideration. It's probably about one section, maybe two section worths, so like 2 square miles, 1 square mile of an area at the most.
Do we have a definition of manufactured home?
I don't think I provided that with you. Basically, manufactured homes are built after the HUD code came into effect. Mobile homes are the before 1976. They had wheels and trailers. We're talking, and this actually goes with the second issue of design guidelines, so I'll go ahead and talk about it. We would like to, if we do this overlay district, we'd like to create design guidelines that would specifically address manufactured homes and have requirements such as permanently affixing these to the ground. Either they have to be...
Not the kind that are on wheels that you take off.
No wheels.
Okay.
We would also, we could make the regulation that there's no skirting, that they have to be on some type of permanent foundation
But
or
these
onto
were
the
homes
ground.
built on wheels at one time, and they take the wheels?
Yeah, that was when they were mobile homes, and
But they
that's
don't
kind
do
of
that.
an outdated
Okay.
term. They don't build those anymore.
They don't build those anymore, okay.
No.
But we're not talking about those kind of homes,
No.
because they're still out there.
And if you go, on the next slide, I have, these are a few examples of manufactured homes that the city would be looking for, that we would write design guidelines so that this is the type of product we see. As you can see, like the one in the lower left-hand corner, just adding a low wall makes a huge difference, and you can't even tell that that's not a site-built home. And again, so this would give then the property owners the chance to site a manufactured homes, which would lower the cost of developing their property to them, but it would also, we would also be looking at bringing up the design guidelines above what the county currently requires.
I have one question that kind of relates, back to the wastewater issue about the septic tanks. You had mentioned requiring that they be in the front yards rather than in the rear, so that there would be that connectivity
Not
for
the
future.
Not the tank and
Not the
line.
tank.
The line, yeah, it might have been,
okay.
it might have been, I think I miswrote that. Yes,
Okay.
not the tank.
Because I'm thinking, how's that going to hinder the landscaping?
Yeah, sorry.
Might grow real well.
Right.
Green grass. Yeah.
Flowers grow really well right on top of it.
Best roses in town.
So again, what we'd be doing is looking at allowing manufactured homes in a small overlay district in the Sonoran Valley area.
And I guess we still would have the same standards that we have, like how we're refurbishing historical Goodyear. That they could still get grants and different things in order to go back into those other areas that.
Yeah, there actually are home and CDBG funds available for manufactured homes. They do have their own limitations. They have different monetary limitations than site-built homes, but
But now that they're
But the homes that are
they would be
existing
open
there
for those.
could
Right.
possibly be eligible if we go for money for that.
That's another thing we might want to educate the public.
Yeah, you have to apply for the money specifically
but-
for manufactured
sure.
homes, though.
You mean for the new homes?
No, for the homes that have been there
Oh,
for quite some
oh, oh.
time that might want to come up to the standards of some of the new homes that are going to be placed out there.
That's a hard nut to crack at
Yeah.
CDAC because of,
Well, as she says, there's programs for it.
There are programs, but we would have to apply for those and then be granted the
Everybody
money.
knows that.
and then they have to be granted.
Sure.
But that's okay, we do
But it
that.
doesn't say you can't try.
Okay, they're not that easy to get.
And then if we did create design guidelines for manufactured homes, those could also be utilized if anyone ever did come in for a manufactured home subdivision. Staff would be able to implement those on those, and that would help us with that tool. And again, if someone wanted to create a manufactured home subdivision, even in this overlay district, they'd still have to come in for a zoning change. This would just be for these individual lots that we'd look at.
Now, this might be off-the-wall question, but could a master plan community be a manufactured home community?
If they're creating a PAD and they write that into the PAD, then yes.
Within this overlay district.
Well, the PAD would come to council on a separate issue, so that at that time, they would say, we're proposing siting manufactured homes in the PAD area, and you would consider that at that time. So it wouldn't just be for the
Be a
overlay
new
district.
development.
Yeah. So are there any questions on the manufactured home or design guideline issues? Okay. All right, then the off-street parking requirements. Yes.
Yeah, regarding your response to a master plan community building manufactured housing, how does that correlate to, in several places you put here, any property owner who proposes a subdivision of land would be required to meet the current city's current development standards?
If someone,
Is not a subdivision of land, would that not be construed as a master plan?
well, if someone wanted to, they had 30 acres and they wanted to subdivide it into 1 acre lots, if they wanted to develop that as a manufactured home subdivision, they'd have to get a zoning change, and they'd apply for the manufactured home subdivision zoning district.
But they'd have to comply with the current existing standards.
Yeah, all the existing with regards to
don't
legal
permit.
access, water, wastewater,
Gotcha.
everything.
Except in the manufactured.
No,
Okay.
manufactured homes as well.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so for currently each home is required to provide a paved driveway and 2 enclosed parking spaces on a paved surface. The county currently does not require any type of garage, and so most of the manufactured homes or site-built homes in the area don't have garages. What staff is recommending is that if allowing carports in the same overlay district that we would allow manufactured homes, if the carport is located behind the home or in such a way that it's screened from the street view. So again, this would be upgrading from the county standards, but it still wouldn't be meeting all the way to the city's standards currently. In terms of a paved driveway, staff recommends that in the AU district, which that's the area we're mainly looking at, paved driveways are required except when the driveway connects to an unpaved roadway. Then they'd be able to keep the driveway unpaved since the roadway they're connecting to is unpaved. But then in the AG district, unpaved driveways would be allowed, and when an unpaved driveway meets a paved roadway, they would have to provide like a 20-foot apron to make that transition.
And when you're saying unpaved driveways, you're not just saying a dirt driveway, it has to be
Not
some
dirt,
sort
it
of
would
rock
be
or
that
some rock.
2-inch aggregate dirt
Yeah.
over 4-inch compacted. It would still be an improved surface, but not a paved surface.
Okay, thank you.
And Katie, if we went through and the city did decide they wanted to pave a specific area through there, all the folks that had matched the previous aggregate driveways would then be required to pave back on their back a certain length? Or
I
no,
don't
they
think we
would
just-
keep the same unpaved,
Yeah.
even if we paved out there?
Generally speaking, if you do an assessment district or improvement district, you typically just improve the public roadway. You don't go back and do anything on the individual properties.
Okay.
And secondly, the unpaved roadway or unpaved driveway suggestion is directed primarily at the AU district or AAG district, which is a 10-acre minimum.
Okay.
And so we're envisioning, if somebody's got a large piece of property and they set the house back a ways, rather than requiring them to pave the driveway all the way back to their house, that they could use a substitute surface. But even in that case, we would be looking at making sure that we comply with the dust proofing requirements.
All right, were there any other questions on that? Okay, on to our last item, the keeping and raising of animals. Currently, large animals and livestock are allowed by right in the AG zoning district. In the AU zoning district, horses are allowed by right, but any other type of animal requires a use permit. Staff is actually requesting to change the code to codify current practice of, again, still allowing horses in the AU district, but limiting them to one animal per 15,000 square feet, which is about 3 horses per acre, which actually is very similar to the current county standards. And we would go ahead and continue to require a use permit for any other type of livestock, which is a more strict standard than the county currently allows. And this would actually be implemented on a citywide basis. We would make a change to the zoning code. And actually, again, as I said, this is actually current practice. We're just codifying it.
Excuse me, and is that with this $2,400 fee?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, currently, and actually that, I thought it was a special use permit. It is a use permit, which I believe is around $700 fee. But yeah, if someone wanted like a cow or a goat on an AU piece of property, they would have to come to the city for a use permit for approval, and that pays $700 and go through the public process to be allowed those type of animals.
Katie?
Yes.
Do we have any ranches out there? I didn't remember seeing any when I was down there, but way back off the road, there looked like that.
There are a
possible
few
to-
ranches out
yeah,
there.
sure.
Mm-hmm. And there's more, most likely some of these 1 to 5 acre houses probably have, I'm sure some of them do have horses, some of them probably even have, goats, and some might have cattle out there currently already. So,
For those who are grandfathered in.
so I'm hearing that perhaps we should.
I'm just, I want 6 chickens and I gotta pay $700 to get a permit for them? I just. And I live out in the sticks? I don't know.
What do you pay if you were in the county? Do you pay anything?
No,
No,
their
so-
animals are allowed outright in the rural
There's a
districts.
limitation on numbers, I think.
There's limitation on
But
numbers.
it doesn't cost you anything.
No, you don't have to go through the public process or anything for approval.
I guess this just controls what kind of animals you have. I mean, if somebody has a record of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I kind of agree. I wouldn't be having any chickens.
Mm-hmm. I guess if the council wanted to pursue it, there would be another option of allowing animals in that overlay district that we possibly create, so it's just in this area where there's already animals existing, or we could open it up to other types of animals if we wanted to pursue that.
You've done a great job
Yeah,
on
you
this.
have.
There's no doubt, Harvey, Joe, and Katie. But, you're asking us for quite a bit tonight, I think.
And
And what you're doing is you're actually sort of changing the framework of the city to some extent. Would it be wise if we had, I'm not ready to say go for this. I think the roadway issues are very significant. But would it make sense for us to have a small committee, say 3 council members, 2 from P&Z, a couple staff, look at all of these and come back to us with a recommendation that this is what we think as representatives of the people? Because
It
we're
would be
changing
nice
the city.
It'd be nice to have a little public input on it, also. Do we have a couple people from out there could sit on it? I mean, I just think,
I was surprised that there wouldn't.
I think it would be helpful to get the feel of
Mobile here.
the community. You know, I'm sure they realize there's going to be some changes,
Well, you
but
know,
we certainly don't want to do this overnight that changes
Well-
their entire lifestyle, that they're, I mean,
We would, we would, right now, we're not looking to make any changes tonight. We're looking for your opinion on, is staff on the right track at looking at these type of changes? And then
Great job looking at it.
each item, we would come back to council, we would come back through the public hearing process, have, community meetings on the subject, go to commission again, go to council in a public hearing rather than in a work session. And on each of these items, like legal access, and that's where we could get into more detail, get more public input. And that's what staff was thinking of the process.
yeah,
that we
I'm
would
with
do.
Joanne on the $700. I think that's pretty steep. But I do like the idea that they have to come in and they do have to pull a permit, so you know the type of animals that they're having on the acreage. I think that's just smart business to know what people are doing in that respect.
But if you look at those houses on the south side of I-10, when you're driving into Goodyear
Oh,
from
yeah.
the west,
Yeah.
do we charge them $2,400? And if so, why would we not charge someone else?
That's
back
true.
for
Do we do that? But she said, no, we don't.
But, no,
We don't have one.
it? Those houses that we've annexed into Goodyear, I think we've annexed that
South of
area.
I-10.
Off of I-10, across from that shop place.
and any house in the city of Goodyear would fall under the same requirement where they'd have to get a use permit for
Not for $700.
animals. No, for that same price.
Oh, $700?
Yeah.
Well, we do charge that. Oh,
You know,
For any house in the
didn't
city.
know that.
I concur with the mayor. I think all of you have done an excellent job in coming in with the recommendation. But by the same token, I still think his idea is good, that we take so many members from council, so many members from P&Z and the public, and particularly some people from Mobile who are going to be directly affected by any changes we make relative to what we've discussed here this evening. So I would maybe push for that.
And also, citizens who don't live in Mobile, that live in Estrella, Pebble Creek, and others, they may not want us to change. I don't know. I just don't know. This is significant.
How does the annexation agreement,
It truly is.
how does the annexation agreement play with this? 'Cause I recall during the annexation agreement discussions, that those folks that had rights to animals, for instance,
you're right.
in that area, we're going to have those rights preserved, and we weren't going to be talking about permitting fees and other things. And that was the whole basis. This goes to the very fundamental reason why Cedarville Gardens always fails, is because we're going to be stripping people of their rights and stripping people of their prerogative to do what they do in the county today. And help me out, because I'm recollecting during the annexation discussions that we asked these very fundamental questions of, what kind of rights do folks have now? What kind of rights are not going to be there when we annex, and are we not going to be taking things away? So,
Well, you're right. Our
well,
understanding.
I'm missing. So,
Yeah, but our understanding at that time, Rob, was that everything that would remain the same, that the county had, we assume that responsibility.
Right.
If they had animals, the animals would remain there.
right.
So,
So we're talking about potentially new manufactured homes and new animals entering the
Correct.
That's right.
arena, but already on lands that have rights. And so to me, if I'm a landowner down there and I thought ahead, if I thought ahead and I had a 10-acre piece or a 5-acre piece or a 1-acre piece within this 75th to 83rd Avenue, this polygon area we're talking about of about a section and a half that we've all driven through, if I thought ahead and bought a lot down there and 10 years from now planned on having a horse, you're telling me, now I get annexed to it. I was under the impression somebody had done that, they'd have the rights.
Vice Mayor, when you annex, everything that becomes legally non-conforming if it doesn't conform with the city standards. And we're not changing anybody's lifestyle. What we're talking about is an area that's kind of evolved over time, and then the transition to urban standards isn't going to happen for a while. It could be over 20 years before Montage or we have a master plan development that brings water and sewer and urban type development to that area. So in the meantime, we have properties existing properties that may want to locate a manufactured home, and we're creating this overlay district to actually make our standards less restrictive, to allow them some additional rights that they don't have under current city standards. But when we annex the property, just because it's vacant, that we didn't agree to apply county standards forever to those properties. They become part of the city, and we have to uniformly apply our city standards to all properties that are annexed in the city, unless we change the code accordingly. And that's what we're talking about doing.
I guess in this section of land, I'm of the train of thought what could have been done there yesterday, with some exceptions. I mean, and maybe that's what you're getting at, Mayor, in terms of the small working group talking about what are those exceptions.
I apologize for the breadth of this. There's a lot of complicated issues. It's a complex issue because there's a lot of different circumstances. We had to kind of beat our heads together for a while trying to figure out how to get our arms around this. And there's a lot of variables in this. So we're trying to, this is the first time we're applying all our standards are geared towards urban type development, and now we have rural type development that's more county, and our code is not equipped for it, so we're trying to apply our code to this area, and it's really tough. So that's where we're having struggles in those areas. If that makes sense.
But Harvey, I mean, to everyone's point, if people bought land down there, they really thought that they were going to have that opportunity to move in there with the same standards that they looked around at their neighbors had. I mean, that's where I think we're going to have the issues.
Right.
So whatever we decide to do, we've got to be, it's not enough to just say we've got to be careful. I mean, I think we almost have to bend over backwards for some of these folks that have had this land for a long time, and we want them not to be too upset over the fact that the city has stepped in and annexed them. So,
Although some of them may welcome it. I
Well,
come from that.
some-
I come
some
from a
might,
childhood with no running water and no electricity. And let me tell you, when I was 12 years old and we got it, I was happy.
yeah, but I think it's more the rules that get placed on them that upsets people, and the animals are a good example of that.
And that's, Mayor and Council, that's why we're coming to you, because this is a tough policy
Yes,
issue,
it is.
and we want you to be aware of the ramifications of this policy issue, because you'll hear from those folks if we apply city standards to those properties where there's an expectation that they thought they could do under county, then now they're in the city.
It's best to ease into it all.
Yes.
Ease into
With some
it.
I'd like to hear from those folks too. I mean, it's their,
I know what they'll say.
and I think the committee is the way to go.
You know, Harvey, one of the reasons we annexed was, you gave us 7 or 8 reasons, and one of those was so that that area of the state would develop according with the challenging standards, so that it wouldn't develop according to county standards. And that's one of the reasons we annexed it, candidly. So. But I don't know, do you want to form a little group? I'm not ready to see.
Well, I'm not ready to.
I think your original proposal of forming a committee is a good idea.
And 3 council members would like to do that, you know, talk to city manager, and if that's okay, and a couple PMZers. What do you think? And citizens.
Yeah, I'd like to be on.
Okay?
Sounds good.
It sounds like that even with the committee that the mayor has mentioned, that we have a public forum anyway, and so everyone else would get a chance to get in there and say what they're thinking, and that's when you're really going to hear it.
You mean a meeting down there?
Well, there or here, now that they have TV down there, they can watch it, so.
I think we need to have the meeting down there.
But from your opening it up to the public, they'll all get announcements, and everyone will know where it's being held, and And chances are you're going to get a pretty good sized population showing up for that.
Okay, we have a little dilemma here. 6:15. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good.
It says in the agenda that we'll start the meeting at 6. Is that correct?
Immediately following the work session.
Then mine's outdated because
I like yours.
I have a regular meeting at 6 p.m. What do you have? I hope
It
you.
is, it's
6 p.m.
So we can go ahead with the regular meeting, or if these, sounds to me like these 2 work session items could be lengthy. Is that a true statement? Certainly the one on community funding could. No? Paul says no.
We have a very short presentation for community funding. Paul and I think combined, we probably will take only about 15 minutes of your time unless you had some extensive questions.
I don't think it'd take long for community funding.
Okay, Rourke, can I go ahead? I can't hear you.
Yeah, I mean, what the hell?
Okay, so I should,
6.
I should recess the work
Recess work
session and
session.
go into this.
Let's do the regular meeting and
Council
come
meeting.
back to work session. That'd be the best way to do it.
Yes, I'm good at it.
Okay, then we'll restart,
How are we gonna,
provide bulleting, I guess. I don't know. They're going to have to stick around. I don't know what to do.
well, no, I mean, we've got, how many folks are here for that? I assume there's a number of folks here for community funding.
I would think so.
Usually, anyway, sorry.
We can't jeopardize
No,
the
you're right, you're right.
It's posted at 6.
legality of the council meeting. But we'll try to get through the council meeting real quick. How about that? Okay? And we can do that. Smile. Okay.